So recently I've been going on the Son of Man channel. One of the things that they mentioned was the Book of Enoch. So I went and looked about that and found out that it's a biblical book. I say biblical book that wasn't included in the authorized version of the Bible, the King James version, I believe. So I'm assuming there were some monks that went around, looked at all the different books that they had, and then finalised what ones would be in what we now call the Old Testament. Now, my problem is with that is the fact that they had to do that in the first place. Because often, people, when they pick up the Bible, they think of it as like all these books, this is how it is. I mean, all of them weren't written by the prophets themselves. No prophets, except Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Quran, was instructed to write things down. That's correct, isn't it? Moses, he got the tablets. They were given to him by God. They got broken. Jesus's the New Testament is written by people after him, most notably so-called Saint Paul. And the Old Testament is, I'm assuming it's monks, isn't it? Or scribes, whoever it was that wrote it down. How did they get the information to write it down from? Because, the thing is I don't get is why God didn't instruct Abraham or Moses or King David or Jesus to write down the words that he was speaking to them, because they had a connection with God. They were prophets, so they had a communication. So why they weren't instructed to write this down? Because they passed all their messages verbally. And obviously God's the Alpha and Omega, beginning and the end. He knows how important communication is to humanity, especially these days. So he knew that we would have these books and etc. Why didn't he instruct his prophets to write them down? Or did he, and they were destroyed? Who knows? But the ones that we currently have, they were written, I don't know, if you look on Wikipedia, it gives you the whole date line of when these books are supposedly written, and the gaps between the different books. So, how many years, assuming that these dates are accurate, how many years were these books just left? How do we know they even formed the Bible? So it's a big problem, because people base their lives on these teachings. But that's the problem, is a lot of people don't even investigate that side of it, how the Bible came into formation. The fact that the Bible isn't the word of God per se. It's not even the word of the prophets, because they didn't write them down. The only part where you could say is Saint Paul, who wrote Acts and letters and stuff, but that was on the formation of the New Testament. So, and he doesn't even count as a prophet anyway, because it's very dubious, the Road to Damascus story anyway, and I'm sure I've went through that previously. Other than that, it's Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was contacted by God and was told to write these things down. But even people will question that, in the sense that he wrote all these things down, although he was illiterate, or he wasn't taught. I don't know if he was illiterate, he might not have been taught. But anyway, so he wrote these things down on whatever, and I believe it's the first Khalifa, the one after him, after he passed away, who collated, no, it might actually have been the second Ummah, who collated what we now know as the Quran, so put it in order. But we do know that Prophet Muhammad, well, I say we do know, we're told that he would verbally recite it, and especially every Ramadan he would recite it from beginning to end. So obviously they would know, it's because that's how it was done back then. They were Hafiz, they would remember these things. So we're hoping that when they collated the Quran, they remembered exactly how the order that these pieces of quilt, paper, whatever it was, stone, went in. And then some people will question that there was no full stop or period mark, whatever you want to call it, in Arabic. So they were added afterwards. So obviously if you've been adding full stops in, did you know where to add them and who added them? So this whole business is very problematic when it comes to looking at the facts behind these things, and why it leads maybe to some people to believe that, are these things that we're believing in accurate? Or are they things that were written long, that took other stories and made these characters up? Are they like characters in a novel? Then there's people who will question, I mean, this maybe adds some validity to the stories, is there's lots of these ancient stories that match, especially with, I think it's the Egyptian stories, that match parts of Jesus' story and match parts of the flood and stuff like that. So are there true stories that, like, is God real, but he was hijacked in that sense? That the problem is we connect God with the Bible and the Quran. If you take them away, people then say, well, then God doesn't exist. But it might not be that case. It may be that he existed, and I suppose the only problem is if he is all powerful. But then again, we only know that he's all powerful, he knows everything, is from the Bible and the Quran. So we don't really know who God is if he isn't the God that we've come to know in the Bible and the Quran, who knows everything. And so therefore, if he knew everything and he had all power, why would he allow things to happen? But then again, he does give free will, so that could be the answer to that question. But if the God of reality, who created everything, he did exist, and then maybe he didn't feel the need to have prophets or write these things down, but other people have come along afterwards and invented these stories to control people, because we do know that religion, especially the Catholic side of religion, there's a huge power in there and a huge control. They own a lot of things and control a lot of things. You only have to research that to find that out. So, I mean, is that the reason why these documents are written? Were they invented long ago to control people and we've just stumbled across them? How can we validate them? Is it? I mean, that's maybe, I guess a religious person will say, well, it's part of faith. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was a very religious person for a long time, and I still do believe in God. I'm just questioning it because I need to question it because of the things that I've learned now from Flat Earth and all those other things, that there's so much of everything that we've been taught that is not as it seems. When it comes to the way that we've taught children to understand the world that we live in as if we know everything, and the fact that we don't know what a lion is really called, we don't know what a tree is really called, we don't leave that as uncertainty to things. We make it very certain that, and we don't. I do wonder what would it be like if we actually taught children the truth. And I've mentioned this previously. Like if we told children that we call this a lion. It was a person this man came up with this name, and that's why it's called a lion. But we don't really know what it's called. If they allowed that uncertainty, would that make our minds different? Because then we would know that everything around us we've labelled, and that maybe would lead us to doubt things or be uncertain and not maybe be as secure as we are in our knowledge. So maybe that's the reason why that is left out, because I'm pretty sure in schools when they teach children, they don't teach children that that we don't really know what all these things are called. We just made them up ourselves because we need to give things a name to be able to communicate those with other people. So I get the reason why we have to call a lion, but the problem I have with it is the fact that we don't realise that we named it and we don't really know what it's called, because we go around thinking that we know everything. We know that this is planet Earth, that's planet Mars. We don't know what the name is, if they do exist. We've made up all these names. The moon isn't called the moon, that's a name we gave it. So that's just that little bit of understanding I think, and I wonder why that's left out, because that is the truth, isn't it? So why is the whole truth not being taught? And even if someone comes along and says, well, it's because we've evolved and we live here and we have the right to name all these things and that's the way it is, there is no other way, so why should we tell everyone that we don't really know what a lion's called and one man made it up? Or is this just a European way of thinking? Because I was thinking today, like when, we call an omelette, oh yeah, they were created by the French. Wait a minute, so you're telling me that in Africa and China and India, people didn't crack eggs and make like omelette-like mixtures? Why do we say the French created them? Same with the television and all these types of things. Why is it lots of things you see they're all European, except writing, which is Chinese, but I'm sure English people would have tried to claim it before people knew that Chinese used to do it before. But what I mean is we've been on 150 different countries doing all these things. We must have come up with the same things maybe at different times. And who knows who created something, because no one knew about each other back then. So it's just a lot of our history is dubious, as it's written by European people to flatter European people, white people generally, well, exclusively I should say, really. So there's a lot of this when you look at all these things, that the history, reality, animals, plants, our existence, our world, everything around us is really unknown to us. We've given it names. We don't know the real names of it. Do we really need to know the real names of it? I don't know. But the fact is that we need to understand that to know that it's us that have put these labels to things. And what was the other thing I was thinking of? Oh, I was also thinking about the when they talk about, give us your flat Earth model and all that kind of stuff, and ice wall edges. And I was thinking about, wait a minute, how would the Earth look? I mean, I've got no way of knowing. I'm not from a model, but I'm thinking that if we stand on a continent, what is around the continent that we stand on? Well, water is around the continent that we're standing on. So we know, we see things and we get answers from the things that we see. So all the continents are surrounded by water. So I would think that what is around everything is water, because that we see that with continents. But the problem is then people say, well, man, what about the edge? Because that problem is because we have seen the picture of the globe, and we've seen universe pictures, most of it CGI, when it's sky at night, or the cosmos, or whatever programs you've seen, most of it is CGI. It's not actual picture, so we don't know whether it exists or not. But in our minds, we've seen that thing, and so then we're assuming there's an edge, we're assuming there's something around it. It may not be like that. It may just be that's what it is. It's just these bits of land with water around it. Then the people say, well, what about the dome, the edge? You should be able to see it. Well, a minute, maybe there is no such thing. Maybe there is no space. We're just what it is. What is existence is what is existence. And there is no need for edge or whatever, because there is no space. There is no vacuum and all that kind of stuff. Things just work the way they do. And so there's just water and sky and clouds, and there's no edges. But then, of course, the person's going to say, well, a minute, if I walk to the very end of something, I must bump into something. Well, I don't know if that's true or not. That depends, maybe. And how do you get around to another side? So I don't know. There's a lot of, it depends. You might be going around that way, isn't it? So I don't know if anyone can go from the other way around to answer that kind of thing. But the problem is, because our minds have this old mindset, we see things through those windows. And it's very difficult to deprogram that to be able to re-see something in that light. Anyway, I think I've said enough. Yeah.